everyone! Welcome to You Can Make That, the cooking show that makes delicious, affordable, and relatively quick meals that your friends, your family, and especially you want to eat. I'm Meg, and I'll be your cooking coach through this culinary journey. Come on, let's make something together, because I know you can make it. So like many of you, I am sheltering in place, and that means I haven't been to any of my favorite restaurants for nearly 3 weeks. Now, although I love cooking at home, I do also love a great meal at a great restaurant. So I've been having a hankering for one of my favorite dishes at a place called Original Joe's, and that is the Joe's Scramble. Now, if you're not from the Bay Area or from San Francisco, Original Joe's is a San Francisco institution. They make a myriad of amazing dishes, but one of the most famous things that they've done since I want to say the 1950s at least is their scramble, and that is a scramble made with eggs, mushrooms, spinach, and ground beef. Now, normally we would make it with that plus everything else, and it has this garlicky, crusty bread, but I realized I forgot the mushrooms at the farmer's market today. And that's fine. It's okay if you have to substitute something or leave something out. The meal is still gonna be delicious. So our first meal is gonna be my version of the Original Joe's sans mushrooms, but it's not sans taste. Okay, so I've gathered my ingredients. As you can see, we have them all laid out. We'll be using 1 pound of ground beef, 3 eggs, 2 or 1 large, there went an egg. 2 or 1 large garlic cloves. I like it a little bit more garlicky, so I use 2 big ones, but you can also use 1. Herbs de Provence, big bag of spinach, about 2 onions. You can use 1, but I had a little one left over from another night, so I'm using that plus a small one. Nutmeg, pepper, and salt. Everything you need for your mise en place. And what does mise en place mean? It just means everything in its place. It's all of the ingredients you need to cook, so you don't have to be running around looking for everything. Prepping at the beginning makes everything easier. So I'm gonna start prepping everything. I'm gonna mince the garlic, chop the onions together, and defrost the spinach. You can use fresh spinach as well, about 10 ounces if you're using mushrooms, but as I mentioned, I forgot the mushrooms, so I'm gonna use the full 16-ounce bag of spinach. After that, we can start putting everything together. We'll put a little bit of olive oil in the pan, and then we'll move forward into this great creation. Okay, I did a little prep. I actually decided that after looking at the garlic when I finished mincing it, that it was actually pretty good in just having this size. Just one of these really large garlic cloves was enough. But this isn't gonna go to waste. Obviously, lots of things come with garlic, but more importantly, we're gonna make a crusty garlic bread to go with the scramble, so it will be perfect. All right, so I'm going to start cooking everything, and this should probably take maybe 10-15 minutes. So let's get started. Great. Let's start with about a tablespoon to tablespoon and a half of oil. I go ahead and eyeball these things. You can measure out. The more you cook, the more comfortable you are with these things. And then put that on a medium heat, medium to medium high. Let it get going a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and, you can wait for it to heat up, but in interest of time right now, I'm gonna go ahead and add the beef. And that is 1 pound of ground beef. We're gonna get this going. You'll start to hear it sizzle and cook. And as that happens, we'll then start adding in the other ingredients. So, all right, the pan is now heated up. You should start hearing a nice sizzle. You just wanna keep moving it around once in a while, just to make sure you haven't got anything stuck to the bottom, but that oil should have helped quite a bit. And you're gonna make this pretty well cooked, maybe about 8 minutes, just until it stops being pink before you add the next few ingredients. Okay, so as you can see, our ground beef has gotten nice and brown. There's not a lot of pink. You can drain off the excess fat here if you want it to be a little bit lighter. I did use a relatively low-fat ground beef. It was a 90-10, so that is probably the lowest you can get. So I actually like to keep the fat in there, especially because once you add things like the spinach, or if you're using mushrooms, it's going to take that up and it's going to add a lot of flavor. So we're going to go ahead and add that garlic. See here? And all of those onions, nicely diced. Oops. If you have a few fall off your cooking board, don't be shy, just get those escape artists back in. Go ahead and stir it up. And you're gonna let this saute for probably another, let's call it 2 minutes. Let's mix it up here. This is actually, if you're using mushrooms, which I love, but did forget, as I mentioned, you would go ahead and put your mushrooms in at this time as well. So let's let that cook, and then we'll move on to our next steps. Okay, so as you can see, this is getting nice and brown. The onions are simmering. I am cooking them and mixing around once in a while. What I'm going to do now is, while this continues cooking, we're going to prep for that delicious garlic bread to go as a side. So let's get started. We're going to go ahead and set the oven to 450. Take that additional garlic clove that we had left over, and let's go ahead and mince it, as I did here. Sorry, I cheated while the camera was off. And then let's go melt some butter and get that all nice and ready. Now, what I'm thinking about for garlic bread is something a little less traditional, but really good. Okay, so I took about 2 tablespoons of butter. I like Irish butter. You know, a lot of people, this is unsalted. I honestly will use salted or unsalted European butter in general, and it's fine. If you do use salted, go ahead and, you know, maybe modify any other salt you might have added. Oh, check this, make sure that's not getting too brown. Ooh, it's almost ready. And that means we're gonna go ahead and add in the spinach and some seasoning. So for seasoning, I'm actually ordering that herbes de Provence I mentioned before. Go ahead and sprinkle it. You should go ahead and measure if you feel you can't eyeball this in your first try. And I use, it's a pretty pungent, in a good way, mixed herb. So I like to use somewhere between a teaspoon and a teaspoon and a half when it's dry like that. And then nutmeg, and I actually have to say nutmeg is one of my favorite ingredients to use. What's great about nutmeg is it's really flavorful, it's really delicious, and it's so surprising that it goes so well in like savory dishes. Most people think of it in desserts or other things, but I really love it with meat. Cinnamon as well, if you love cinnamon, which I do. So that nutmeg I mentioned, we'll go ahead and add that. Now go ahead and do a teaspoon. Make it almost even. Maybe a little bit under, 3/4. Mix it all up. Turn it down if it feels like it's a little too high. If you're starting to stick at the bottom, I do recommend mixing a little bit. Don't worry, we'll deglaze the pan a little bit later. Okay, we're gonna add salt. I really like sea salt or kosher salt as the salt of choice. This one is a little bit finer of a sea salt. Go ahead and put about a teaspoon in there. You can always adjust to taste. And then pepper. Now, I believe in fresh ground pepper, and what I love about this pepper grinder in particular is it has multiple options for how much or how big the kernels of pepper are. I did get it at Sur La Table. It was very affordable. They have a lot of expensive options, but this one is a great one. And I think it was, it's definitely under $20. But anyway, I highly recommend it. For this, I would probably do to the second to the smallest piece there and move forward in that direction. Ooh, that oven's done. Okay, so couple of those. That's probably going to be about another teaspoon of pepper. Really just eyeball it. Now I'm going to go deglaze the pan. So when your pan starts, or anything starts to stick a little bit when it comes to the food, deglazing is your best option. And really what that means is you're going to put some type of liquid in the pan to get all those great browned and tasty bits up from the bottom. Now you can deglaze with any type of liquid. You can deglaze with water or chicken stock. It really depends on what you're making. I like to deglaze with wine. Also, you get to sip it as you cook, and that's never a bad thing. So I would say, you can use a cheap white wine like this in here. You could even do a red. I just want something to be a little light because it's not really part of the majority of the recipe. So just something to bring those bits up and into the center of goodness. So maybe just about not even a quarter of a cup of white wine. You can see how it bubbles up and it's getting all of those nice bits off the bottom. That stickiness there, which is good because it adds a lot of flavor to the dish. If you see that you need a little bit more, feel free to add a little bit more. It is going to cook off, so you don't have to worry about that. You're not going to get drunk from the wine in your meal as much as you may want to. There we go. So that was probably another 1/8 of a cup. So that's 3/4 of a cup max at this point in time, but really take it slow. Do it as you need it. Don't dump it all in at once. All right, now that I've done this, what we want to do is go ahead and grab that spinach. So let me go do that and I'll be right back. So I went ahead and defrosted the frozen spinach. It's mostly defrosted. There are some frozen particles in there, but that's okay. It'll be fine. It will cook off as we put it in. So let's go ahead and put the whole amount of spinach in there. Okay, maybe I didn't defrost it enough, but that's okay. The whole bag. Let's go ahead and get that whole bag in there and we'll mix it around. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and mix that up with the ground beef and the onions and garlic that were in the pan before. As you can see, all that steam, that's a lot of the water and the frost coming off of the spinach. That's fine. You can also, as I mentioned, use fresh, but honestly, I bought the frozen because it's always good to have frozen spinach on hand in case you just think of something that you want to make. And then if you know and you've already planned it out, you can go ahead and get the fresh spinach. But keep mixing that in and we'll let this cook. Now while I do that, and while this kind of defrosts a little bit in here and cooks more, we're gonna go prep the rest of the butter that I mentioned before for that garlic bread. See you in a second. Okay, so I've checked on the ground beef and spinach mixture. As you can see, it's still cooking. We're gonna go ahead and cook a lot of that water out of the frozen spinach that we had before. And we're gonna go ahead and prep the garlic bread that I've been talking about. So let's just go ahead and let this cook. I'm gonna go get the butter. I had nuked it in the microwave for about 30 seconds plus a little extra, so 35 seconds to get it nice and bubbly with the garlic inside, so it kind of gets it extra garlicky as well. And we're gonna go ahead and prep the buns. So for the garlic bread, I actually chose to use ciabatta rolls instead of a full baguette or French bread loaf. It kind of gives you your own personal amount of garlic bread. This whole thing is meant for about 2 people to eat tonight. So we're gonna go ahead and prep those. Let me get the right knife. Here we go. You want a nice, sharp, serrated edge knife so you can get through that crusty roll. Let's go ahead and cut these both in half. Nice. Here. And I am a little bit of a perfectionist, so if I open it up one way on one side, I like to open it up the same way on the other side. Okay, perfect. Look at that. So you've got 2 nice open rolls, and then I've got that melted butter with the clove of garlic we had before. We're gonna go ahead and use a sort of a pastry brush or any other kind of basting brush that you have. Anything that you have in your house that does the same trick is totally fine. We tend to have a lot of tools in this house, me especially. I'm a bit of a tool geek when it comes to cooking, but you know, my boyfriend does as well. But anyway, so what we're gonna do is go ahead and get this garlic and butter all nice and prepped on the bread. And if you find that you need to make a little bit more, you can do that. I like to get a nice garlickiness here. It's just to prep it a little. And then do the great thing about when you're cooking and you're cooking at home for yourself, even when you're doing it with your friends on YouTube, if you do a little less butter and you need more, you can always get it. So let's go get about maybe 1 more tablespoon of butter, so that'll be a total of 3 tablespoons of butter in total. And as you can see, I still have a little bit of the garlic in there, so let's mix that up. Now I'm back with that extra butter, nice and melted in the microwave. I'm gonna go ahead and spread that on this bread. Look how nice that looks. Nice and buttery, garlicky, delicious. Don't be afraid to be generous with both the garlic and the butter. And go ahead and scoop the rest of it out if you need to. Great. Now, I've gone ahead and buttered both sides here. What I'm going to do is close them up and wrap them all both in foil and get those in that oven. Great. So I got those in the oven. I'm going to set a timer for about 10 minutes. I'm going to keep stirring this amazing concoction here every so often. And this is the time you can go set the table, put the wine glasses out, water glasses, tea, whatever you're choosing to drink with this, and get that prepped, okay? So we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes for bread and the final touches. Okay, so I went ahead and I set the table, I got the wine glasses out, I brought this bad boy ready to go. You should never cook with anything that you're not prepared to drink. That is the secret to using cooking wine, or wine to cook with. I'm stirring this scramble just a little bit. It looks like all of the liquid is out, which is exciting. So we're gonna go ahead and actually make the scramble part of it, okay? So let's get that. Let me put this down, grab those eggs, all 3, none of them got away in the end, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so all of the water is out. It looks really nice, yet moist, not too dry. And I'm gonna go ahead and take those eggs, make a little hole for each of them right here. So we've got 3. We kind of make a little hole for them. We're gonna crack the eggs. Now this one was the one that fell, so he's a little cracked already, so just be careful you don't get any shells in there. Go ahead and get that into the hole. And the next one into the hole. Great. And the last one. Right into that hole. Let that sit there for a minute, less than. By a minute, I don't mean an actual minute, I mean just give it a breather there for a second. You see they're kind of cooking in the heat. You see that? And then start scrambling. There we go. Scramble, 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 scramble. Scramble, 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 scramble. There you go. Scramble, scramble. And we're just going to come back and keep letting that scramble cook. Then as we cook, we stir and scramble, and then eventually we'll go ahead and mix it all up together, and then we'll taste again. Now they're almost completely scrambled. Nice and mixed up. Like that. See how it's come into this beautiful dish. It's flavorful and hearty. Lots of nice proteins. Make sure that scrambles almost completely right. Now this looks like it's almost done. The most important thing to do is taste it just a little bit. Make sure that it's well seasoned, that you don't need to add anything more, because it's not too late to do that if you need to. Let's go get a tasting spoon. Oh, and it looks like the garlic bread's almost ready. We can go ahead and let that sit there as well, just a little bit longer while we go get a tasting spoon and add any additional salt or pepper or anything else. So I went ahead and added just a little bit more salt, just because I liked that. Got myself a fresh spoon. That's perfect. It's gonna be a lighter flavor, not super intense, but it should have some nuances. Now the one thing I also like to add at the last minute is just a little bit of Parmesan cheese. So let's go ahead and get this plated, get that parm ready. We'll go ahead and grate a little bit on there, and we'll take the delicious garlic bread out of the oven. All right, I went ahead and took the scramble and plated it, and I've now just taken this gorgeous garlic bread. Ooh, it is warm, garlic bread out of the oven. Let's see how that butter, whew, how that looks. Ooh, that's nice. Ooh, very hot. You see that? Looks delicious. Go ahead, plate it there. And we'll take the other one, do the same thing. Don't be afraid if it feels very hot. That's what happens when you take something right out of the oven. There we go. And then the final touch is just a little bit of Parmesan, which Joe doesn't normally do, but in this kitchen, Parmesan always works. Let's go ahead and grate a little bit on top. There. Just Parmesan to your taste. Don't be afraid of getting it on the bread. It won't be bad. And then you have a simple Joe's Scramble. How exciting is that? So there we have it. That took about 45 minutes in total. The more you do it, the faster you'll get. But we have a beautiful scramble from the original Joe's, or at least inspired by it. And having it plated on the table with a great glass of wine. And as I said, I knew you could make it.